Hey everyone, welcome. In every society, we're always dealing with this push and pull, right? Between the roles we've always known and the future we're trying to create. For centuries, we've had these set frameworks for how men and women build families, build communities. But now, the whole world is asking this really big question: what does it actually mean for a woman to have real autonomy? And how does her individual freedom fit in with everything else? Family, faith, tradition. That's what I want to dive into today.
And really, this is the conflict, isn't it? It's what so many of us are trying to figure out in our own lives. You've got tradition and the values that have, kept us grounded for generations over here. And then on the other side, you've got this huge modern push for individual freedom. So the big question, the one we're really going to get into in this explainer, is can we find a balance? Is it even possible for these two things to coexist?
Okay, so let's start with why this matters so much right now. And look, this is not some academic debate we're having. I honestly believe this is the question of our time. All those old answers about gender roles, they're being questioned everywhere. And it started this huge global conversation that, believe me, affects every single one of us in pretty much every part of our lives.
And what's so wild is just how far this conversation has gone. I mean, we're not just talking about economics here, who has what job. No, this thing is woven into the very fabric of everything. Our intellectual life, our social life, education, morals, culture, the whole shebang. It literally shapes how we think, how we raise our families, and what kind of world we're trying to build.
All right, so before we can even talk about finding a balance, we've got to be on the same page. What are we actually talking about when we say autonomy? Because that word gets thrown around a lot, and frankly, most of the time, it's completely misunderstood. So let's try to define it. You've probably seen this happen, right? The second this topic comes up, people immediately jump to one of two extremes. On one side, you have people who hear women's autonomy and they panic. They think it means total chaos, a rejection of family, faith, all responsibility. And then on the other side, you've got this idea that it's just unlimited, do whatever you want freedom with no consequences. But you know what? Both of those ideas are just wrong. They totally miss the point, and they just make it impossible to have a real conversation.
So here's what I think is the crucial point. Real autonomy, true autonomy, it's not about rebellion or breaking away from the things we care about. It's about empowerment. It's about a woman having the agency to make her own informed decisions. It's about her having the chance to use the unique talents God gave her and to move forward in life with the dignity and equality that is her right. It's simply about being an active, respected participant in her own life and in her community.
Okay, so if that's our definition, if that's what real autonomy looks like, then that brings us to the biggest question of all. How do we do it? How do we embrace this empowerment without, throwing away the values and traditions that give our lives meaning? This right here, this is the key.
So let's just put the question right out there. Can a woman be autonomous and still be deeply committed to her values, to her family, to her traditions? Is it possible for those two things to move forward together? I believe the answer is not just yes, but 100% definitive yes.
So how? What's the bridge that connects these two worlds? What's the one thing, the one foundational pillar that can support both a woman's autonomy and her connection to her values? Well, the answer is actually really simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It's one word: education. That's it. Education unlocks everything.
I mean, just think about it for a second. An educated woman knows her rights. She can make smarter, more informed choices, and not just for herself, but for her whole family, her whole community. And this creates this amazing positive ripple effect. I'm not just making this up. The research from all over the world shows this again and again. Where women are educated, you see more stable families. You see healthier kids. You see family income go up. You see social awareness go up. See? Education doesn't just empower one person. It literally lifts up the entire society.
Now, something that's really important to get straight here is that this idea, it's not new. It's not some radical concept we just imported from another culture. No way. The call for women's empowerment is actually timeless. It's something that's deeply rooted in both our nature and our faith.
And I want to be crystal clear about this. The right for a woman to be educated, to live a life of dignity, to develop her own personality, that is not a Western idea. It's not something to be, imported or rejected. It's a fundamental human right. A natural right. It's something that's affirmed by our deepest values and, for so many of us, by our faith.
And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at our own history.
We find amazing examples everywhere. I mean, look at the early Islamic era, at the time of the Prophet himself, peace be upon him. We see these powerful, autonomous women in action. You have Hazrat Khadija, right? A hugely successful businesswoman. You have Hazrat Aisha, a deeply respected teacher and legal expert. You even have Hazrat Shafa, who held a public office as an administrator. These women are living proof that autonomy, faith, and culture can exist in perfect harmony. They already did.
So what's the takeaway from all this? It's that when a woman's autonomy is combined with knowledge, with patience, with wisdom, it becomes this incredible force for good that can literally transform generations. But, and this is a huge but, it has to be connected to a moral foundation. It needs that intellectual grounding. Because without it, that same freedom can just lead to chaos.
And that brings us to a really tricky problem we're facing today. Because as much as we talk about freedom, we also have to admit that the very idea of freedom can get twisted and even used to exploit people.
Let me break down what I mean. Think about it like this. In the past, the problem was pretty straightforward. Women were denied their rights because their freedom was taken away. Simple. But today, we have this new kind of sneaky injustice. In the name of freedom, women are often exploited in a new way, and it leads to what I call the double burden.
And this is the really cruel irony of the situation. This so-called economic autonomy often just means a woman has to do twice the work, right? She's expected to go out and earn a living, and she's expected to manage the entire household. So she ends up with more responsibilities than the men in her life, but without the same rights. Come on, that's not progress. It's just a new kind of injustice.
So, okay, if that's the problem we're facing, what's the solution? What's the real path forward? How do we build a society where this autonomy is actually genuine, and where it's good for absolutely everyone?
Well, in my view, the only way this really works is if we have a major shift in how we think as a society. This isn't a problem one person can fix. Real, lasting autonomy, it can only happen when society as a whole doesn't just, accept it, but actively fights to protect women's rights in every single situation. It has to be a real, sincere, shared commitment from all of us.
So I want to leave you with this final thought, and it's a big one. It is never, ever enough to just throw the word freedom around. For that word to mean anything, it has to come with awareness. It has to come with a sense of purpose, and it has to come with an understanding of healthy limits. So the real question for all of us is, are we ready to build that kind of freedom together? Thanks so much for listening.